People are leaving California in droves for many reasons, and they are turning North Carolina into home. In this video today, I'm going to go ahead and review with you the top 10 reasons why you need to get the heck out of California and make Charlotte your new home. Now stick around to the end because I've got a few extras that didn't make the top 10 list, but I think they're worth noting. Now, if you are looking for everything Charlotte, North Carolina, the good, the bad, everything in between, and South Carolina, yes, that includes Fort Mill and Rock Hill, you have come to the right channel. Be sure to click the subscribe button if you like what you're hearing. And if you want to stay on top of all of my latest videos, click that notification button and I'll make sure to pop into your inbox every time I post a new video. Now, for real, I get calls, texts, and emails every single day from people just like you. Usually starting out with, "Hey Kayla, I saw your YouTube channel, we're moving to Charlotte." Well, if that's you, whether it's 9 days or 90 days from now, whether you're moving across the country, California, or just across town, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. I would love to make your move exactly what you want it to be. So let's dive into today's video. California. Why is everybody leaving? Well, I'm pretty sure everybody has a pretty clear understanding, regardless of where you live right now, as to why California might not be a place to call home anymore. Well, today I'm going to review the top 10 reasons, counting backwards of course, why people are leaving California and why you might want to as well. Number 10, the weather. Now, before you get on me about, oh, well, California has a dry heat and it's so nice. Here's the thing. Yes, there is a dry heat, and in San Diego, I will agree, the weather is always sunny and beautiful, but I will say I do like a little bit of rain every now and then. I think most people would, but that also means we get flowers. So there's a pro and con. But here's what I really mean about weather. So I'm gonna put it out there. North Carolina does get hurricanes off the coast, but it's very, very, very rare that it hits Charlotte, North Carolina. In fact, the last hurricane to have any substantial wind to hit Charlotte, North Carolina was Hugo back in 1989. Yes, the 1800s for all of you Z-Gen watching right now. Back in the 1900s, we had a hurricane. Here's the thing, it's very rare. But here are things that are very common on a yearly basis in California that we don't get here. One, earthquakes. We don't get them. Now, there's gonna be some of you in the comments that are gonna go, but we did get an earthquake. Yes. Out in Bat Cave, we did get, I think it was like a 2.2 little tremor that happened 10 years ago. Actually, I think it was like 15 years ago. That was about it, all right? There's really nothing that happens, especially when you compare it to sitting on the San Andreas Fault and the other fault lines that sit in California, meaning you're gonna get a little rumble pretty consistently. We don't have to build for it, we don't have to worry about it, we just don't get it. So no rumbling in the middle of the night. Landslides, we don't get them, partially because we don't have massive runoffs of water, let's say from the Rocky Mountains, nor do we have massive runoffs or rains, which I know LA has built their infrastructure to account for this, right? The LA River, it's usually dry unless you have massive rainstorms with flood water into those waterways. We have consistent rain and consistent sprinkles and consistent ability to absorb water. So we don't get landslides and floods like you guys do out there. It just doesn't happen. Now, last but certainly not least, it might not be technically weather, but I'm gonna combine it in there because it has to do with nature, and that is wildfires. We just don't get them. Now, up in the mountains, there was a wildfire, gosh, I think it was about 5 years ago. It hit a couple acres and then it was done. But we hadn't had a wildfire in probably 20 years. California, I know it's a part of your cycle, right? It's springtime, time for fires. We just don't get that here. So if you are wanting to escape the constant fires and possible your house burning down, earthquakes, as well as landslides and some of the other pieces in California, like it may be falling off the planet. I know, conspiracy theory. California, leave it, come to North Carolina. That's all I gotta say. Number 9 on the list is the education system. Now, I hear this a lot from those that are moving, clients of mine that are coming from California, and that's where I'm getting a lot of this list, are things that I've heard from people moving away from California, right? And part of that is the education system. From what I have been reading and what I have been seeing, because I don't live there myself, I live in the beautiful state of North Carolina, is that the education system is going down the drain, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse every year. Here's the cool thing about North Carolina. It seems to be getting better and better. In fact, it's providing more choice to parents on where they send their children, such as school choice. We have charter schools, we have private schools, our public schools are phenomenal. And in fact, in Charlotte, of the top elementary, middle, and high schools, we have, I would say most of them that are ranked in the top 10 are in Charlotte, which is really cool. Now, on top of that, we also have a plethora of state universities and colleges, as well as training colleges and things of that sort if you want to go to different kind of specialty schools. So if you're looking for schooling and education, Charlotte definitely has it. And on top of that, we also have supportive laws for homeschooling. That's right, I know in some states it's kind of frowned upon, which is very odd because we've only been going to school for the last 120 years or so regularly. Before then, we were schooled at home. Well, guess what? Homeschooling is supported in North Carolina and in Charlotte. And there's a great website that you can check out, K through 12. It's a very large group of homeschool, I'm gonna call it a community of homeschoolers, but you will find that here, which is pretty neat. Jobs. Jobs is number 8 on the list. That's right. People are leaving California because there's no jobs. Now, you might be thinking, well, there's no jobs because there's no businesses. We're going to get to that. But when it comes to job security and raising a family, or even if you're just on your own, you need money coming in order to keep an economy running. Well, here's the thing. Because there are so few jobs available in California, especially for skilled workers, people have to leave. In fact, California is rated as one of the worst job markets in the United States. Now, here's the cool thing. North Carolina, specifically Charlotte and the towns and cities around it, are actually increasing in job availability, and their unemployment rates are decreasing. In fact, we're set to outpace the US averages because they take a look at the next 10 years on what it might be. We're actually going to future pace or outpace the rest of the country over the next 10 years in job growth, economy growth, and job security, as well as lower unemployment, which is really big. That brings us to number 7 on the list, cost of living. What does it cost to live in North Carolina? Now, there's a lot of factors, and I know in some of my other videos, I've put this in different formats, like United States was 100, we're at 101, and other states are at 154, and this one's at 85. In this particular comparison, I'm talking about what it would take for you to earn to live in that state. Now, that means what it's going to take to pay your bills. That doesn't mean what it's going to take for you to pay for extra taxes or pay for gas or pay for other things. In this particular comparison, we're talking just living, paying your rent or your mortgage, going to the grocery store, things like that. In California, the overall average, mind you, the population of California is almost 40 million people, all right? And there's many cities within California, so we're talking the more rural areas and the cities, okay? The average is $53,000 a year. That's how much it would cost to live there. Versus Charlotte, North Carolina, just the city of Charlotte specifically, would be $43,000. But if you look at the actual percentage difference between the $53,000 and $43,000, that's a huge percentage difference from one state to the next. So keep that in mind when moving here. It's going to cost less for you to live on a daily basis. Number 6, California is way too liberal. Now, here's the thing. There's plenty of stats to back this up. And yes, California is a very heavily Democratic state. It has been for generations. However, from many of my clients and people that I know that are leaving California, part of the reason is because the actual legislation has become too liberal to a point where things just don't make sense. They have terrible issues and yet lots of taxes, which we'll get to, and yet nothing is being solved. One of the things that I love about North Carolina in general is that North Carolina is not necessarily red or blue. Now, if you take a look at how voting has happened over the last couple of years, you'll see that it's been a little bit of an ebb and flow and give and take. The more rural areas are usually going to be more conservative, while the cities are usually going to vote more Democratic. Here's the cool thing. It has not gone so far left or so far right that voices are being taken away and not heard. That's the idea of democracy, is to have a conversation and allow voices to be heard and come together. And sometimes you win, sometimes the other person wins, but together we create something that everyone will enjoy and live in. That's just not what's happening in California. from what I've been told and what I've been reading, is that it's only one voice being heard, and therefore you gotta leave if that's not the voice you have. North Carolina and Charlotte, we welcome all sides. I don't care if you're a liberal, Democrat, or if you're a conservative Republican, or if you're a libertarian. If you want to go shoot shotguns at your gay friend's wedding while smoking dope, have at it. That's the viewpoint here, right? Everybody has a realm or spectrum that they hit, but the cool thing is you can't put it in a box. That's one of the things I love about Charlotte. Number 5 on the list has to do with crime rates. That's right. Crime rates are on the rise in California. Now, if we go ahead and backtrack and see why that's happening, it probably has a little bit to do with defunding of the police, which means there's less cops, which means there's more crime. It kind of goes hand in hand. But what we're seeing in California, there was actually a 31% increase in violent crime, 12% increase in personal property crime, and an 8% increase in weapons crime. Now, let's flash all the way over, and again, I'm going specific to Charlotte because that's where we are. That's what I'm talking about. Specific to Charlotte, we have had an increase in crime. I'm not going to say we're, of course, sweeping the streets of all crime, but comparatively speaking to the actual population growth, which is about 100 to 150 people a day, we are keeping a much lower pace when it comes to increase in crime. In fact, violent crime was only up 3%. And property crime only up 6%. An overall crime rate increase of 4.3%. That is almost nothing compared to California and what they're seeing. So no, I don't think Charlotte is a dangerous place, especially compared to where I grew up in New York, or really anywhere in New York in the city. Crime rates are much, much higher. It is so safe in Charlotte, and there's always going to be those pockets where you're not going to want to live. I'm going to put it out there. That's with every city. But as a whole, you can usually stay in any area of Charlotte and leave your doors unlocked, and you're probably not going to have an issue. In fact, up in the areas where we live in, I know plenty of people that don't even lock their doors because you don't really have to, because it's safe, and the communities are phenomenal. Number 4, if you're an entrepreneur, get the heck out of California. Why? It is the 48th worst state for starting a small business and running a small business. There's a lot of reasons for this. A lot of it has to do with taxation, high and very stiff regulations, minimum wages. All of these things combined make it very difficult for small businesses to be successful. In addition, there's very few things that they can deduct or depreciate in California, which if you're in the real estate realm and you're wanting to do investments, it's also considered a small business. There's very few depreciations you can do in the state of California. And in most cases, it is more of a tenant state than a landlord state, meaning they're usually going to take the side of the tenant no matter what. So now let's look at Charlotte and North Carolina as a whole. North Carolina is rated the top 5, so it's the 5th best state for you to be an entrepreneur and start a small business. They make it easy for you to do so, give you encouragement in the fact of additional write-offs and things of that nature. SBA loans and small business loans in North Carolina are much easier to attain, and there are even organizations and groups that can help you succeed if you need it. Similar to like having a board of directors, but they have it throughout the state that you can lean on. You can ask questions and receive real answers. So if you're an entrepreneur, come on over to Charlotte. Number 3, taxes. Yeah, that's right. California has the highest taxes out of any state in the country. In fact, those who live there, about 60% of what they make annually goes to some form of taxes, whether it be property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, you name it, you're getting taxed left and right. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. And yet, California still has problems, even though they are making the most per capita in the entire country by a state-by-state basis. They have the highest sales tax at 8.25%. And in addition to that, in some counties in California, LA County perhaps, it's 10%. That's right, 10% sales tax on the things that you're buying. That's insane. Now let's compare that to Charlotte, North Carolina. North Carolina as a whole has a sales tax of 4.75, but different cities and municipalities will have different sales taxes. Now specifically in Charlotte, the sales tax is 7.25. Now we're talking about income taxes. The income tax in North Carolina is 4.25. Now that does waiver depending upon what the IRS decides to do, but as a whole, we have really low taxes comparatively speaking to the rest of the country, especially compared to California. Number 2 on the list are coming from people that are moving out of the cities in California, not necessarily the more rural areas. The issue is homelessness. That's right, California has one of the biggest homeless problems in the country. And when you take a look at the population, it's pretty eye-opening. California as a whole has about 40 million people as a population. However, their homeless population is close to 116,000 people. Now, North Carolina, of course, like every state, we do have some homeless. The population of North Carolina is about 10,500,000 people. And our population of homeless is 3,600 or so. Now, I know what you're gonna say, yeah, Kayla, but California population is way higher, and you are correct. So let's do some numbers. If we were to take a look at the actual percentage of the population that's homeless in California versus in North Carolina, the percentage that's homeless in California is 0.294%. All right, doesn't sound like a lot, but let's compare that to North Carolina. In North Carolina, the population is 0.000343%. Vastly different when it comes to the homeless population. Now, a lot of that has to do with regulations, the cost of living. Let's face it, if a 1-bedroom apartment is going to cost you $2,000, potentially, depending upon the area, you might not have that on a monthly basis. Our average rents here in Charlotte are about $1,200. Now, of course, if you want the more luxury apartment, it's going to be more, but around $1,200 is going to get you a very nice apartment, potentially even a small home to rent. So it's vastly different, which also helps keep our homeless population down. In addition to that, drug problems are not nearly as bad as California. Now, every city and every state has drugs. I'm not saying that they don't, but because of the regulations and how things are kept under tow, North Carolina has far less of an issue than that than California. And the number one reason why people are moving here, moving away from California to North Carolina, specifically Charlotte, of course, because Charlotte is the biggest city in North Carolina, but why they're coming here. The cost of homes. In 2016, a study was done that showed that California home values, or prices should I say, were 383% higher than the US average. In fact, they even found that rent prices were 287% higher than the US average. And that was in 2016, before the big 2020, 2021 boom that happened most recently. Up-to-date numbers show the average home price in California is $728,000. Now, if you take a look at that, you'd have to earn a heck of a lot to be able to afford even a simple home. Compared to Charlotte, the Charlotte average home price is $399 right now. Look at the difference of that, almost half of the cost of a home in California. Now, here's the cool thing too. The price per square foot, completely different. California average homes are much smaller than Charlotte. In Charlotte, for $400,000, you're getting a 3 to 4 bedroom home with 2 to 3 bedrooms, a beautiful 1/4 acre lot, and possibly a bonus room. That's right, you could be looking at a home between 1,500 to 2,200 square feet, depending upon where you are. So, what do you get in California? Well, I've seen 1-bedroom condos that are in the middle of nowhere, it seems like, for $700,000 to $900,000. So, take what you've earned, cash it in, and come to Charlotte, North Carolina, and get way more than you bargained for. Now, as I promised, there was a few extra bits that I wanted to put in here that I just find to be better. One, we're on the Atlantic Ocean, which means we have warm water. In fact, in North Carolina in May, you can find the water temperatures of about 74 degrees. Now, for those of you who live in California, you know that's warm, right? By mid-August, our temperatures can reach 85 degrees in the ocean, and it feels phenomenal. The cool thing is we can go out, surf, and swim without wetsuits between May all the way into October, which is amazing. Secondly, we can reach some really cool states pretty quickly. That's right, because we're on the East Coast, we can hit anywhere from Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, all the way up to New Hampshire. We could also hit the southern states like South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, all within just a few hours. From California, it takes a little while, and as we know, there's only a couple states in that area, and there's not a whole lot going on in most of them. The great thing about the East Coast, because that's where the US started, there are so many towns and cities and so much history that you can check out. I think that's a plus. And my last but not least, close to the Caribbean waters. In fact, you can actually drive to the Caribbean. That's right, because on the East Coast, we have what? That's right, the Keys, the Florida Keys. Absolutely beautiful drive. If you want to fly into Miami, rent a car and drive the few hours down to Key West. You will not be upset that you did it. So if you're ready to make that move from California, give me a shout. Hopefully this was informative. Drop your comments below. What are some other differences that maybe I left out or maybe you know about that I don't? Whether it's 9 days or 90 days, whether it's across town or across the country, give me a call, a text, shoot me an email, set up a Zoom, and I would love to make your move exactly what you want it to be. Until next time, I look forward to showing you around town.